From the Dominion Post, in Morgantown, West Virginia, this is the Postcast, the audio companion to the Dominion Post newspaper. In this episode, we get an update on the COVID-19 outbreak at Sundale, and Morgantown joins its voice to the choir of protests across the nation. I'm your host, Chris Schultz, and these are the week's top stories. Back in March, Sundale Nursing Facility became one of West Virginia's first COVID-19 hotspots. Ultimately, the number of cases tied to the facility numbered in the dozens, but now, just over 2 months since the first positive case, Sundale is COVID-free. I'm joined now by Dominion Post business editor Suzanne Elliott. Suzanne, we've been watching very closely, as many people have across the state, for months now, the situation at Sundale Nursing Facility. Can you give us an update now as to what the status is of the people there?
Well, yes, Chris. They have no more active cases of COVID-19. Through testing and isolation, they have managed to essentially get the virus out of the facility.
Well, that's certainly exactly what we wanted to hear, but as we know from now having seen this virus work for several months, there can often be some lingering after effects. How is the general health of the staff and the residents that were affected?
Everybody's really not showing any symptoms at all. You know, considering the average age of a resident at Sundale is 85, staff seems to be in good spirits and in good health. And they're just trying to get back to normal, Chris.
Well, we certainly wish them the best in that endeavor. But as I mentioned before, even though it has dominated our conversations and it's dominated our coverage for several months now, this is still a very new virus that we realistically don't know as much as we would like to know about. Is there any opportunity, is there any potential for a silver lining here for doctors and health officials to learn from the situation at Sundale?
Absolutely. Carl Schrader, the medical director at Sundale, who's also a WVU medicine physician, got a $30,000 grant from Clinical Transitional Science Institute to study patients who have recovered from COVID. What he's planning to do is to run blood tests on the patients to see if they've developed antibodies that make them immune to getting the virus again, and how long that immunity may or may not be. He is going to begin testing in August, and if everything works out, he hopes to continue studying this and possibly go to the National Institutes of Health or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for additional funding.
Well, I certainly look forward to hearing your coverage on that study in the next couple months. Now, Suzanne, we often talk about the physical impact of this illness, but the requirements for social isolation and distancing also carry an emotional toll. We're now entering what would have been the third month of isolation for residents and staff at Sundale. Where are we at now that the state is reopening as far as visitation and distancing for those people?
Well, there are still restrictions in place, and social distancing obviously is, very much encouraged, as is wearing masks. But a company here in Morgantown, City Neon, built this really unique thing. It's like a 3-sided box made of clear plexiglass. It's 6 feet high on both sides and 4 feet wide in the middle. And the patient will sit on a bench in front of the front entrance of Sundale and is able to visit with family members who sit in chairs surrounding the box. And it's vastly, improved everyone's spirits. People are happy. The residents are happy. The families are happy. And there is talk about putting in a permanent installation, a similar installation there at the facility, and materials will be donated by a husband of one of the residents.
So oftentimes when speaking about Sundale, our focus has been on the residents due to the heightened risk factor that age and other ailments cause. But we also know that several staff members were infected. How have they been impacted, and how's their recovery coming along?
Well, everybody, again, is recovered. They've been tested and no COVID. But what's happened is it's been emotionally draining. A lot of the staffers, some people have gone a couple months without seeing their family members. They've sort of been holed up at local hotels. And Sundale recognized that and gave their staffers $2 or $3 an hour raises. But since everything's opening up, people are able now to visit with their family members, and life is slowly getting back to normal. Dr. Schrader himself went, I believe, 2 months without seeing his 3 young children that he sent to his mother-in-law's, so they would not be, possibly infected by COVID-19.
Well, some definitely much needed good news coming out of the Sundale facility here in Morgantown. Suzanne, thank you so much for sticking with this story for so many months and bringing us to this positive resolution. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
On Tuesday, at least 500 protesters, perhaps as many as 1,000, took to the streets of Morgantown to protest the killing of George Floyd by police officers in Minneapolis. As is customary, I spoke to one of the Dominion Post reporters about this story, but before we hear from him, we think it's important to also let you hear directly from the people on the streets themselves.
What does the end result of this movement look like to you? What is a win?
A win?
A win is full justice reform throughout the whole system. It's not arresting people. We can arrest people every day. We can arrest people every year. But until they do a full clear out search and wipe out all these up cops.
You gotta stop killing us, bro.
And not even just the cops, the system in itself. The whole thing needs to be changed, bro. And we ain't finna stop. You see, these people are tired. These people are tired. So let's see. See if we can do a little
angry,
something.
we're just tired.
And can I get your name? We are angry. Don't forget that shit. We are angry.
These racist cops have got to go! Ho ho! These racist cops have got to go!
Why do you think it's important for Morgantown to have its own protests rather than joining larger protests in, say, Pittsburgh, for example?
Yeah, because, Morgantown is its own city. We have our own downtown, our own community, our own people. So, it's important that, we go out here and represent, show what the city's actually about. People have, this misconception of West Virginia being an all-racist state. So, there are people here that care, that, know Black Lives Matter.
Is there anything else that you think I or our listeners should know about?
Honestly, if you want to be active, you're not quite sure, you don't have, people with you, you may be solo, still come out here, there's a community out here ready to support you.
George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd!
I'm Samantha Norris.
Samantha, are you like one of the central organizers of this?
Yeah, it's so it was me and my best friend Joe. I'm a Black American. I'm a woman of color who's seen racism all my life, who's seen my friends suffer all their lives, who's seen the country tell us again and again that we don't matter. And I'm over it, With George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud, when we see these people die, senseless deaths based off the color of their skin, it destroys a part of me inside, I didn't expect this many people to come out to the protest, and seeing the turnout, seeing how many people care and how many people want to help, it's heartwarming. It's enough to make me cry, and I'd be lying if I said I haven't cried some. And we're going to keep this going. We're going to keep the momentum. This protest was thrown together in 4 days. And if we can do this in 4 days, what can we do in a week? What can we do in a month? And we want to keep people motivated, keep people going, make sure people are out there voting in November, make sure people are attending their city council meetings, are attending their county commissioner meetings, are making sure their voices are heard.
When do you think the next action is going to be here in Morgantown?
God. If this keeps going, I'm going to plan another one for next week.
What does it mean to you to see this kind of turnout you mentioned earlier in a town like Morgantown?
It's incredible. I mean, Morgantown's a small place, but we have a lot of heart here. We have really loud voices. We have people that care. And everyone that's come out and shown that they've cared, it makes Morgantown feel like home.
I'm joined now by Dominion Post reporter Will Dean. Will, you and I, as well as several other Dominion Post staff members, were present for Tuesday's protest downtown Morgantown. First of all, can you categorize the size of this event for us?
It was one of the biggest events I've seen since I've been in Morgantown for almost 7 years now. The organizer said she estimates at least 500, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people showed up. It was very big.
All those people downtown Morgantown, we obviously know why they were there, but can you tell us how did they make themselves heard? What form did these protests take?
Yeah, so there was kind of two modes. The protest started in front of the courthouse on High Street, and while they were in front of the courthouse, black protesters shared their experiences with racism and with police violence, and it was a discussion and a forum and a learning experience. And then they would march around downtown. One instance, they marched into Westover. They would chant Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace, things like that. It was completely nonviolent. I didn't see any property get damaged. I didn't see anyone get hurt. The police gave a wide berth to the protesters and let them do their thing, and in response, everyone behaved.
Will, you and I both in our time down at the protests were speaking directly to individuals. I know what I heard, but I'm just curious to hear on your end, what was the mood that you were getting back from the people that you were hearing from?
I think the ultimate mood was that people are fed up with this kind of police violence happening over and over again on camera against unarmed black people. And for some reason, the George Floyd incident seems to be a little different than previous similar things. And while there was a lot of anger, there was also a lot of love and a lot of togetherness and honestly a lot of pain being shared by people who have experienced similar things in their own lives.
Will, what did you hear from the protesters that you spoke for as far as what they want to come out of this movement?
They want real structural change, not just a prosecution of the officers involved in George Floyd's death. They want, there was no one answer. One person suggested ending qualified immunity, but more broadly, they just want a change in police culture and the way that black people are treated in America. Racism is still alive and well, and it shouldn't be. It never should have been, was the attitude, but it definitely should not be alive and well right now.
So, Will, as you say, this is obviously a much larger issue than just Morgantown, as everyone is seeing on a daily basis in the news. But has there been any other activity in the area, in the region that you're aware of?
Yeah, so Morgantown had smaller protests on Friday and Saturday. Over the weekend, Fairmont had a protest as well. There was a large protest in Pittsburgh. There's actually a protest planned this Saturday in Davis, West Virginia, which that's a pretty small town. And it's pretty remarkable that these protests aren't just happening in New York City or Minneapolis where this incident happened. This really is a nationwide and even worldwide response against systemic, repeated police brutality caught on camera just over and over again.
Will, did the leadership of this protest let you know if they have anything else planned in the coming weeks for Morgantown?
I was told that there could be, but that as of yesterday, there were no definitive plans.
All right, well, Will, if there are any other protests or actions in Morgantown, I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again. Thank you so much for speaking to us about this situation today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and Black Lives Matter.
That conversation between Will and me was recorded on Wednesday. As you heard, we anticipated more action from our local activists, but what we didn't expect was for them to turn around and have another protest the very next day. But we were more than happy to be back in the streets on Thursday to keep this conversation going.
I'm Benjamin Kareem Cox legally. Everyone here is risking their jobs, risking their families, risking their loved ones. I've known people who lost their families for coming out here. So there's a lot of people who possibly can lose their families and lose their homes behind this. I met someone literally the other day and had to post it about someone who lost their original home with their family just because they came out here.
Because they got kicked out?
Yeah, they got kicked out behind them believing in this protest.
When we were talking last, you got pulled away by a pair of women. Can you tell me what they told you?
They basically said my words were right, but my presentation or how I said it was wrong. And I was like, how do you expect from a young black man? I'm speaking calmly, but it's like I'm coming from pain. Like I've seen and I've been in situations where police officers aimed a gun at me. I've been in situations where the people of the same color have had that gun on me. I've been in the same situations where I've seen other people had the gun on them by a police officer, and I had to intervene. So
it's not just words for you.
Yeah, it's not words for me. This is my actual life. I've met people who literally had police brutality in here, and they had a story. So with all of this, I love seeing this. I love seeing this. Everyone coming together because everybody is risking their homes, risking their jobs, risking their presentation for this.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No peace.
On Tuesday, you had said that you were shooting for more action next week.
Yeah.
What changed between then and now to make you want to not only organize for today, but also for Saturday?
So I just didn't want to stop. I went home on Tuesday and I was so rejuvenated. You know, I was so energized and I knew that we couldn't stop. I saw that Clarksburg had the protest planned and I was like, immediately, we have to do something. So the first thing we did was we started doing the nailings, which started the day before yesterday. We started doing the daily nailings at 5:30. Marcus planned this. He's part of our group. It's called SEC, Solidarity for Equality and Compassion. They're a really great group of people that want change to happen in Morgantown. And I got 100 messages after I left of people being like, when's the next thing? When's the next thing? And I decided the next thing was going to be this weekend. So Saturday, 3 p.m. at the WV Mountain Lair, we're going to hold it's a concert, march, and candlelight vigil. We're going to start with live music at 3 until about 4. Then we're going to be marching for 2 hours. At 6, we're going to go back there. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have more music. And we're going to end it on a candlelight vigil. I need West Virginia to be a shining example for how change and reform is done. And that's the goal. It's not over till we have new laws on the book. It's not over till we have reformation. It's not over until cops are required to have at least a year training and licensing and insurance and things like that. It's not over until internal affairs investigations aren't a thing anymore and it's an outside organization handling that. And we're going to fight every day to make sure that happens. Until the day when everyone can wake up in this country and truly feel like they are equal and free, we're not going to stop.
I'm joined once again by Dominion Post reporter Will Dean. Will, you once again went to downtown Morgantown to cover Thursday's protest, Thursday's action. I was a little surprised. I'm not sure that organizers had originally planned to have an action today, but what can you tell us about the size of the crowd that showed up?
It was smaller than Tuesday's, but that doesn't mean it was small. I'd say there were probably 200 people there at the peak. Compared to Tuesday's 500 to 1,000. There is another action scheduled for Saturday at the mountain layer, and that one should be bigger than either of the ones this week.
And Will, we obviously, as we mentioned before, we know the reasoning. People are frustrated and fed up with the treatment of black people primarily at the hands of our nation's police. But did you notice any difference between the mood on Tuesday and the mood on Thursday?
Yeah, a little bit. I think people were a little more raw emotionally tonight, especially in terms of sharing their experiences with racism here locally in Mon County. And everyone seemed even more committed to not stopping until there's real change. All 4 officers involved in George Floyd's death have been charged. And not just here, but across the country, people are still protesting because while George Floyd's death did set all this off, that's not what it's about anymore. It's about everything that happened before him and everything that is happening now and will happen in the future if things don't change.
And speaking about police, we know that on Tuesday, as you said in your own words, they gave the protesters, the demonstrators, a pretty wide berth. What about Thursday?
So for most of it, I didn't really see any police. I saw one Morgantown police officer and one sheriff's deputy, but they just sort of seemed to be driving around doing normal business. When the protests moved to the Mountain Layer Green, 5 WVU police officers did come, and they knelt with the crowd, and they had a dialogue and a conversation. And other than that, there was no police presence.
Well, Will, last time I spoke to you, we said that we would be speaking to you again if there were any new developments, and that's exactly what you've done here. So I want to thank you for staying true to your word and coming back onto the show after a sudden development like this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Have a good night.
That's all for this week's episode. The links to all the stories we discuss are also in the description of this episode on your podcasting app. If you haven't already, subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We would also really appreciate it if you would take the time to rate and review us. Nobody's exactly sure why, but a rate and a review combo really goes a long way to boost the show. Be sure to check out our sports podcast, Best of 7. Andrew and Sean are now putting out new episodes every week. You can also check out our local history podcast, All About History. An all-new episode, all about the 1918 influenza pandemic and its impact on Morgantown and the surrounding areas, is live now. We want to hear from you. Do you like the show? Do you hate the sound of my voice? Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? Let me know. Email podcast@dominionpost.com. Or you can reach out on any of the Dominion Post social media. We're Dominion Post, WV, on Twitter, Dominion Post _WV on Instagram, or go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Dominion Post WV. Tweet directly at me if you like. I'm at Schultz Reports on Twitter. That's SCHULZ. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you back here next week. Wash them hands.